There is a story so old that empires rose and fell while men whispered it in secret. A story they tried to silence with crosses and stones and the seal of a tomb. They thought a grave could hold it. They were wrong. For 300 years, telling this story could cost you your life, and still it spread from a stable in a forgotten town to fishermen on a lake to the ends of the earth. It could not be buried, it could not be burned, it could not be stopped. Tonight you will hear it, not rushed, not preached at you, just told slowly the way a story should be told to someone who is tired. And maybe you are tired. Maybe you have been carrying something heavy for a long time now, a worry you cannot set down, a grief no one else can see, a question you're afraid to say out loud in the dark. Maybe sleep has been hard to reach lately, and the nights feel longer than they used to. If that is you, then this story was kept alive for you, for this night, for the person lying in the quiet, hoping to be held. So close your eyes now. You don't need to watch anything. You don't need to do anything at all. Let the weight of today go. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. You are safe here. Let this ancient story carry you. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The night the sky held its breath. Who was he, this child born in the dark? Before we follow him to the water and the wilderness, to the cross and beyond it, we begin where he began. Small and quiet, and almost unnoticed by the world. Because that is the first surprise of this story. The one they would later call King of Kings did not arrive in a palace. He arrived in the cold, among animals, on a night when there was no room for him anywhere. Picture the town of Bethlehem, a small place clustered on a hillside about 6 miles south of Jerusalem. Its name means, in the old tongue, house of bread. Remember that. It will matter later. The Roman Emperor, Caesar Augustus, had ordered a census. Everyone had to return to the town of their ancestors to be counted. And so the roads of Judea were crowded that season with travelers, tired families, dusty and footsore, moving through the cold nights toward the towns of their fathers. Among them walked a carpenter named Joseph, and beside him a young woman named Mary, heavy with child near the end of her waiting. They had come from Nazareth, a journey of perhaps 90 miles on foot and by donkey, days of walking, sleeping under open sky. Imagine that long, slow journey, the cold mornings, the dust of the road. Mary swaying on the back of the donkey, one hand always resting on the child within her, feeling him move. Joseph walking ahead, watching the horizon, worrying quietly about where they would sleep and whether they would arrive in time. 2 ordinary people far from home, doing a hard thing because they had no choice, trusting that somehow it would be all right. And when they finally reached Bethlehem, weary to the bone, there was no room. The inn was full. Every corner taken by other travelers, other tired families who had come for the same census, door after door, and no room, no room, no room. So they were given the only shelter left, a place where the animals were kept, a stable. A cave, some say, cut into the hillside, low and dim, warm with the breath of oxen and the earthy smell of straw and beasts. And there, in that humble place, in the deep of the night, the child was born. Mary wrapped him in strips of cloth, the way mothers did then, snug and warm against the cold, and laid him in a manger, a feeding trough for the animals. His first bed was the place where the beasts came to eat. His first pillow was straw. His first blanket, the warm breath of the ox and the donkey in the dark. There were no trumpets, no golden cradle, no crowd of admirers pressing in to see. Only a young mother and a carpenter far from home, and a newborn's first cry rising into the cold Judean night. And perhaps that is exactly how it was meant to be. For a king who would spend his whole life among the poor and the forgotten, this was the fitting beginning. Quiet, humble, hidden away from the eyes of the powerful. Breathe. Let that settle into the quiet. The one who made the stars, laid in a manger in a cave in a town called the House of Bread. There is nothing grand here, nothing loud, just a mother, a father, a newborn, and the soft sounds of animals shifting in the straw in the dark. The whole world was asleep, unaware. History was turning on its hinge in a place too small for anyone to notice. And is that not how the most important things so often arrive? Not with noise and spectacle, but quietly in the small hours, in the places no one is watching. The turning point of your own life may already be here, hidden in an ordinary night like this one, closer than you think. Out in the fields nearby, shepherds were keeping watch over their flocks by night. Ordinary men, poor men. Men who slept under the open sky beside their sheep, who smelled of wool and earth and smoke, who owned little and were counted for less. In that world, shepherds were near the bottom, rough workers whose word was not even trusted in a court of law. The kind of people the world overlooks entirely, and it was to them, not to kings in their palaces, not to priests in the temple, not to the scholars bent over their scrolls, that the news came first. The dark sky above the fields tore open with light, and an angel stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy for all people. For unto you is born this day, in the city of David, a Saviour." And then the whole sky filled with a great host, praising God, singing glory in the highest and peace on earth. And when it faded, and the fields were dark and quiet again, the shepherds looked at one another and said, "Let us go and see this thing." And they hurried into Bethlehem, and they found the baby, just as they had been told, lying in the manger. And they went out again, telling everyone they met, their poor, tired voices carrying the first news the world had heard of him. And maybe that is the first gift this story offers you tonight. That the holy did not come to the important, the powerful, the ones who had it all together. It came to the tired travelers with no room. It came to the shepherds in the cold. It came to the small and the overlooked and the ones who were simply doing their best to get through the night. It came to people like us. And notice who was left out of that first night. The emperor in Rome, who had ordered the census, slept in his palace, and never knew that the child who would outlast his entire empire had just been born in one of its forgotten corners. The priests in Jerusalem, only 6 miles away, carried on with their duties and heard nothing. The important people, the busy people, the people who were sure they already knew how the world worked, they missed it entirely. It was the ones with time to look up at the sky, the ones who were poor enough and still enough to notice, who were let in on the secret first. There may be a gift in your own smallness tonight, in your own stillness, in the very quiet of this late hour. The busy and the certain rush past the holy, but you are here, awake in the dark, listening, and that may be exactly where the good news finds you. You are not too small for this story. You never were. Rest here for a moment. Let your breathing slow. Let your body grow heavy and warm, because the child in the manger would not stay a child. He would grow quietly for 30 long years in a small town, in an ordinary life. And when at last the time came for him to step forward, the first place the road would lead him was not to glory or applause, but out, alone, into the silence of the wilderness. And the wilderness, as we will see, was waiting. Chapter 2. The River and the 40 Days. Years passed in that quiet town. The Bible tells us almost nothing of them. The child grew. He learned the carpenter's trade at Joseph's side, the smell of cut wood and the feel of the plane and the chisel, the weight of a beam across his young shoulders. He learned to shape a door, to mend a table, to build the things that ordinary families needed. He grew in wisdom, the old book says, and in stature, and in favor with God and with the people around him. 30 years of ordinary life, 30 years of sawdust and calloused hands, 30 years of morning prayers and shared meals and small daily faithfulness that no one thought to write down. The one through whom the world was made spent most of his years on earth simply being a good son, a good neighbor, a good worker in a small town no one important had ever heard of. There is something quietly comforting in that, if you let it settle. So much of a holy life is hidden. So much of it is ordinary, the long, unremarkable years of doing the next small thing well. Those years counted too. Your hidden years count too. The days no one applauds, the faithfulness no one sees. And then, when the time came, he walked to the river, the Jordan. A slow, brown, winding river cutting through the low desert valley, the lowest place on the surface of the earth. And at the river stood a wild man named John, dressed in camel's hair, eating locusts and wild honey, crying out to anyone who would listen, "Turn your hearts, wash yourselves, prepare the way." People came from all over, from the city and the countryside, the rich and the poor, soldiers and tax collectors and ordinary folk, drawn by something in this wild preacher's voice. They came to be baptized by him, to be plunged beneath the slow brown water and lifted up again as a sign that they were turning their lives around, washing away the old and stepping into something new. And one day, into that crowd of ordinary sinners seeking a fresh start, walked Jesus of Nazareth. And he asked to be baptized too, not because he had anything to wash away, but because he chose from the very beginning to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in the water, among the ordinary, among those who knew they needed saving. John did not understand. Why would this one need washing? "It is you who should baptize me," he said. But Jesus insisted gently that this was the way it must be, and he went down into the muddy water, and John lowered him beneath the surface. And when he came up, dripping in the morning sun, the sky tore open above him. A voice came from heaven, and it said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." And the Spirit of God descended on him, gentle as a dove, settling onto his shoulders. Beloved. Before he had preached a single sermon, before he had healed a single person or performed a single miracle, before he had done anything at all that the world would call impressive, he was already called beloved. The love came first. It always comes first. Remember that tonight, as you lie in the dark, you do not have to earn the name. It is given before the work, before the proof, before you have anything to show for yourself. Breathe deeply, and then, this is the strange part, the very same Spirit that had just called him beloved led him straight into the wilderness, not to a throne, not to a celebration, into the desert, alone. 40 days and 40 nights in the wild places, no food, only the sun beating down by day and the deep cold seeping in by night, the jackals calling somewhere in the dark, the endless dry hills stretching in every direction with no soft place to rest. 40 days of hunger gnawing steadily at him, hollowing him out. 40 days of silence with no voice to answer him, no friend to share the burden, no comfort but the memory of the words spoken over the water. It is a hard thing to be alone that long, to be hungry that long. The mind grows thin and the spirit grows weary, and every small temptation begins to look like relief. That is precisely when the tempter chose to come. Not when Jesus was strong and fed and surrounded by friends, but when he was at his weakest, his most worn, his most alone. That is how it usually comes for us too. Not in our best hours, but in the tired ones. Not when we are full, but when we are empty. And when he was at his weakest, when his body was hollow with hunger, the tempter came to him. "If you are the Son of God," said the voice, "turn these stones into bread." And Jesus answered, "Man does not live by bread alone." The tempter took him to the height of the temple. "Throw yourself down, let the angels catch you. Prove it." And Jesus answered, "Do not put God to the test." The tempter showed him all the kingdoms of the world, glittering in a moment of vision. "All of this can be yours," said the voice. "Just bow to me." And Jesus answered, "Away from me. Worship God, and God alone. 3 times tempted, 3 times he stood, not by his own hunger's strength, his body was failing, but by holding fast to what was true, one steady word at a time. He did not argue, he did not bargain. He simply remembered who he was and to whom he belonged, and he would not be moved. And notice what the temptations were. Turn stones to bread, take the shortcut, meet your need your own way. Do not wait. Throw yourself down, force the proof, demand that God show up on your terms. Bow and take the kingdoms, grasp the reward now, without the long, hard road. They are the same 3 voices that come to all of us, especially when we are tired and hungry and alone in a wilderness of our own. The voice that says, take the shortcut. The voice that says, demand your proof. The voice that says, grasp it now, on your own terms. He heard them all, and he chose the longer, harder, truer way. Rest here for a moment, and here is what I want you to hold on to tonight. The wilderness came right after the words, beloved son. The hardest, loneliest stretch of his life came right after the mountaintop moment. If you're in a wilderness right now, if this is a dry season, a hungry season, a lonely one, it does not mean you're forgotten. It does not mean the voice that called you beloved was wrong. Sometimes the desert is not punishment. Sometimes it is the place where you find out you can stand. He stood, and when it was over, the angels came and cared for him. You are not alone in your wilderness. You never were. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders drop, because he came out of the desert ready, and the people were waiting. Chapter 3. The ones nobody wanted. What did he do first, this man fresh from the wilderness? He did not gather an army. He did not march on Jerusalem. He walked along the shore of a wide blue lake, the Sea of Galilee, and he called ordinary people to follow him. Fishermen, most of them, men with rough hands and sunburned necks, who smelled of fish and lake water, who knew nothing of scrolls and temples. Simon, whom he would call Peter, the rock, Andrew his brother, James and John, the sons of thunder, mending their nets in their father's boat. Come, follow me, he said, and I will make you fishers of men. And they left their nets right there on the shore, still wet, still full, and they went. They did not stop to weigh the cost or plan the future. Something in his voice was worth following into the unknown. Think of what he chose. Not the educated, not the wealthy, not the well-connected men who could open doors and command respect. He built the foundation of everything on ordinary working people. Men who would misunderstand him, argue with him, fall asleep when he needed them, and run away when things grew dangerous. He knew all of that, and he chose them anyway. And then came the ones nobody wanted. A tax collector named Matthew, sitting at his booth by the roadside, the kind of man everyone despised, who worked for the Roman occupiers and grew rich off the taxes of his own people. A traitor in the eyes of the town. A thief with the law on his side. Jesus looked at him, at this man everyone had written off, and said 2 words, "Follow me." And Matthew rose from his table of coins and left all of it behind. He ate dinner with sinners, in their homes, at their tables, laughing and talking with the very people the religious leaders would not walk beside. He touched people no one would touch, the lepers, the outcasts, those whose diseased skin had turned them into living ghosts, forced to cry out, "Unclean, unclean," so that others could flee before them, forbidden to come near another human being, forbidden even to embrace their own children. They had gone years, some of them, without a single kind touch, and Jesus reached out his hand, his bare hand, and laid it on them. He did not have to touch them to heal them. He could have healed with a word from across the field, but he touched them because they needed the touch even more than the healing. They needed to be reminded that they were still human, still worthy of another's hand. And under his touch, the sickness fled, and the skin was made new, and the outcast was welcomed back into the land of the living. The respectable people were scandalized. Why does he eat with those people, they asked. Why does he spend his time with the broken, the failed, the unclean? And his answer has echoed for 2,000 years. It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I did not come for the ones who have it all together. I came for the lost. Breathe. Let that sit for a moment. He came for the lost, for the failed, for the ones who had made a mess of things, for the ones who were too much, or not enough, or both at once. He did not wait for people to clean themselves up before he loved them. He loved them first. He sat down at their tables first. He spoke their names first, before they deserved it, before they earned it, before they even understood who he was. And I wonder if there is a part of you lying here in the dark that believes you have to earn your way to being loved. That if people knew the real you, the tired you, the failing you, the you that you keep hidden, they would turn away. Hear this. Tonight, softly. He already knows. He knows the tired you and the failing you and the you that you keep hidden away where no one can see. He knows all of it, every last thing you are afraid of. And he is still sitting at your table. He is still speaking your name. He did not come for the polished and the perfect. He came for you exactly as you are, in the state you are in right now, in the dark, at the end of a long day. You do not have to become someone else first. You do not have to fix yourself before you are welcome. The welcome comes first. It always comes first. You are seen, you are known, and you are not turned away. Rest now. Let that settle into the quiet, like a stone sinking softly to the bottom of a still pond. Because the crowds were growing larger by the day. Word was spreading from village to village. There is a man who heals, a man who welcomes everyone, a man whose words are unlike anything we have heard. And soon those crowds would follow him into a lonely place, hungry and far from home. And they were about to see something with their own eyes that they could not explain and would never forget. Chapter 4. 5 loaves and a hungry crowd. Have you ever felt that what you have to give is simply not enough? Not enough time, not enough strength, not enough money or patience or love to meet everything that is being asked of you? You look at what is in your hands, and then you look at the size of the need in front of you, and the gap between them feels impossible. Far too little, far too small. And you wonder how you're supposed to be enough for all of it. If that is you tonight, then this is a story for you. Stay close and listen. The crowds had grown enormous. Thousands followed him now, up the hills, along the shore, into the wild and lonely places, hungry to hear him, desperate to be near him, carrying their sick, bringing their children, longing for a word or a touch. Wherever he went, the multitude followed. One day they followed him to a lonely place across the lake, a green hillside far from any town, and he had compassion on them, and he taught them, and he healed their sick. And they stayed so long, so caught up in his words, that no one noticed the sun sliding down the sky. The day slipped away. Evening came, and there they were, thousands of them, far from any village, far from any market or bread. And everyone was hungry. 5,000 men, the old book says, and women and children besides, perhaps 10,000 souls or more. Out in the wilderness, hungry, far from any town. The disciples were anxious. Send them away, they said, so they can find food. But Jesus said, you give them something to eat. They stared at him. With what? There was a boy in the crowd who had 5 small barley loaves and 2 little fish, bread for the poor, and a few dried fish. That was all. Enough for a single child's supper, nothing against a hungry multitude. But Jesus said, bring it to me. Breathe deeply. He told the disciples to have the people sit down on the green grass in groups in the soft evening light. And they sat, rows and rows of them. Thousands of tired faces turned toward him, not knowing what was about to happen. He took the 5 small loaves and the 2 little fish into his hands. He looked up to heaven. He gave thanks, the way any humble person gives thanks over a small meal. And then he began to break the bread, and it did not run out. He broke it and gave it to the disciples, and they carried it out into that vast crowd, sitting on the green grass in the evening light. And they came back for more. And there was more. And they went out again, and again, moving through the thousands, and every hand was filled, and every mouth was fed, and still the bread kept coming from his hands. 5,000 fed, 10,000 maybe, counting the women and the children, from one boy's small lunch. And when everyone had eaten their fill, not just a taste, but their fill until they were satisfied, the disciples went out and gathered up the leftover pieces so that nothing would be wasted. And they filled 12 baskets, 12, one for each of them. More at the end than they had held at the start. Imagine those 12 tired disciples who had said, "It is impossible, send them away," now walking back through the crowd, each carrying a heavy basket of bread that had come from nowhere they could explain. Each of them holding in his own arms the proof that what looks like far too little is never too little in his hands. Rest here for a moment. Let that image stay with you. The baskets overflowing in the golden light, the thousands sitting satisfied on the green grass, the sun going down over the quiet water. Here is the quiet miracle inside the miracle. Jesus did not create the bread from nothing, though surely he could have. He took what was already there, a small ordinary gift, 5 barley loaves and 2 little fish, freely given by a child who had almost nothing to give. And in his hands that little became more than enough for everyone. He does the same with us still, not with our strength, but with our smallness, not with what we think we ought to have, but with the little we actually hold in our tired hands tonight. The 5 loaves of a hard, ordinary life, the 2 fish of a weary and worn-out heart. He does not wait for us to become impressive. He does not ask us to first make ourselves enough. He simply says, "Bring it to me. Bring me the little you have. Let me give thanks over it. Let me break it, and watch what it becomes in hands that are stronger and kinder than yours. What feels like far too little in your hands may be exactly, wonderfully enough in his. You are not too small. What you carry is not too little. Breathe, and let that be true tonight." Because the crowd went home fed, but that same night out on the dark water, his friends would meet him again, and this time on the waves. Chapter 5. The One Who Walked on Water. Let me take you out onto the lake now, in the dark. After the crowds were fed, Jesus sent his disciples ahead of him in the boat, across the Sea of Galilee, while he went up alone into the hills to pray. And he stayed there a long time, in the quiet, under the stars, while the boat pulled away from the shore. And the night turned rough. The Sea of Galilee is a place where storms rise fast and without warning. It sits low, ringed by hills, and cold air spills down from the heights and slams into the warm air resting over the water, and in a matter of minutes the calm, glassy lake becomes a churning, heaving thing, all white spray and black troughs. The fishermen knew this. They had seen it 100 times, but knowing did not make it any less frightening in the middle of the night. That is what happened now. The wind rose against them, straight into their faces, cold and relentless. The waves grew high and hard, breaking over the sides of the little boat, filling it with cold water. And the disciples, some of them seasoned fishermen who had known this lake since boyhood, who had rowed it in every kind of weather, strained at the oars with everything they had, and made no progress at all. The shore stayed far away. The wind would not let them through. Hours passed, the middle of the night, the 4th watch, the old book says, that darkest, coldest stretch before dawn, when the body is most tired and hope runs thin. They were exhausted, soaked, afraid, alone on the black water, going nowhere. And then they saw something moving toward them across the waves. A figure walking on the water. Breathe, they cried out in terror. A ghost, they thought. But through the wind came a voice they knew. Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. And Peter, impulsive, fierce Peter, called back, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said one word, "Come." And Peter climbed over the side of the boat, and he stood on the water, and he walked. For a moment, a real impossible moment, a fisherman walked on the waves toward his Lord in the middle of a storm, his feet on the water, the wind still howling. And Peter, of all people, doing the impossible, one step at a time, his eyes fixed on the face in front of him. As long as he looked at Jesus, the water held him. As long as his gaze did not waver, he did not sink. But then he looked around. He saw the wind. He felt the waves rising, the darkness beneath his feet, the impossibility of what he was doing. And fear rushed in, and he began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried. And immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. Rest here for a moment. Let that word stay with you. Immediately. There was no delay, no lecture first, no waiting to see if Peter would figure it out on his own. The moment Peter cried out, the hand was already there. And then they climbed into the boat together, the Lord and the fisherman he had just pulled from the deep, and the moment they stepped in, the wind died down. Just like that. The howling stopped, the waves flattened, and there was a great calm over the whole dark lake, the water going smooth as glass beneath the last of the stars. Here is what I want you to carry into your sleep tonight. Peter did not sink because he stepped out. He sank because he stopped looking at the one who called him. And even then, even sinking, even failing, even afraid, the hand caught him. You may feel tonight like you are sinking, like the waves are too high and the water too deep, and your strength gave out hours ago. Hear this softly. The hand is not far away. The moment you cry out, it is already reaching for you. It was reaching before you called. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. Let the storm be what it is. The hand is stronger than the storm. Breathe slowly now. Let the water go calm. Let your own storm grow quiet, wave by wave, until the surface is still and the stars come out. Because the storms on the lake were one thing, wind and water, frightening but passing. But soon he would face a deeper darkness than any storm. He would stand at the mouth of a grave and then walk into the darkness of death itself. And he would do it unafraid, because he had come to prove that not even the grave was stronger than the love that made us. Chapter 6. The Voice at the Tomb. Now we come to the heart of it, the place where this story goes deeper than any storm. There was a village called Bethany, just outside Jerusalem, and in it lived 3 people Jesus loved, 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus. His friends, the house where he rested, the table where he was always welcome. And Lazarus fell sick, gravely sick, the kind of sickness that empties a house of its laughter and fills the days with quiet dread. The sisters sent word to Jesus wherever he was. "Lord, the one you love is sick. Come." It was a simple message, full of trust. Surely he would drop everything. Surely he would hurry to the friend he loved, but Jesus did not come. He waited. 2 more days he stayed where he was, doing other things, saying strange words about how this sickness would not end in death, but in the glory of God. And in that waiting, in that silence that must have felt to the sisters like abandonment, Lazarus died. Think of how that must have felt for Mary and Martha, watching the road each day, sending word to the one person who could help, and hearing nothing, watching their brother slip away while the friend they trusted stayed silent and far off. If you have ever waited on a prayer that seemed to go unanswered while everything fell apart, then you know something of what those 2 sisters felt in that house of grief. By the time Jesus arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb 4 days, 4 days sealed behind a stone. The morning was in full cry, and Martha came out to meet him on the road, and her words were heavy with grief and something close to reproach. "Lord, If you had been here, my brother would not have died. Have you ever prayed that prayer? Where were you? If you had come, this would not have happened. If you had answered, I would not be standing here in the ruins of what I loved. Breathe. Jesus did not scold her for it. He asked to be taken to the tomb. And then comes the shortest verse in all of Scripture, and one of the most tender. Jesus wept. The one who knew he was about to raise Lazarus still wept. He stood among the mourners at the grave of his friend, and he cried. He did not float above the grief. He entered it. He let the tears fall. Let that sit for a moment. Let it be a comfort. Whatever you are grieving tonight, a person, a hope, a version of your life that will not come back, he does not stand above it, unmoved and untouched. He weeps too. Your sorrow is not something he watches coolly from a distance, waiting for you to pull yourself together. He steps down into the grief with you. He sits in the dark of it beside you. Your tears are not a weakness he is ashamed of. They are tears he shares. And there is something else, something the sisters could not yet see. He wept even though he knew joy was minutes away. He honored the grief anyway. He did not skip past it or rush it. So do not let anyone tell you that faith means never weeping or that hope means hurrying past your sorrow. Even the one with resurrection in his hands took the time to cry. And then he came to the tomb, a cave, with a stone laid across the mouth of it. "Take away the stone," he said. Martha protested, "Lord, by now there will be a stench. He has been dead 4 days." But they rolled the stone away. And Jesus lifted his eyes and prayed, and then he called out in a loud voice, one command into the darkness of the grave. "Lazarus, come out. Rest here for a moment. Hold your breath with the crowd, and for a heartbeat nothing." Silence. The crowd frozen. And then, movement in the dark mouth of the tomb, a shape, and the dead man came out, still bound hand and foot in the grave cloths, his face wrapped in a cloth, stumbling and blinking into the daylight, breathing, alive. The sisters gasped, the mourners cried out. "Unbind him," Jesus said gently, "and let him go. 4 days dead, 4 days behind a sealed stone." And he walked out of his own tomb into the arms of his sisters, because a voice he loved had called him by name. Here is the mystery at the center of this story, the thing they could never bury, no matter how hard they tried. He is not only kind to the living, he has authority over the grave itself. The darkest, most final thing we know, the thing we fear most in the small, sleepless hours of the night, is not beyond the reach of his voice. He speaks, and even death listens. He calls a name, and even the tomb gives up what it holds. And if he could call Lazarus by name out of a sealed and stinking tomb after 4 days in the dark, then hear this gently. No darkness you are in tonight is too deep for his voice to find you. Not the depression that has settled over you like a fog. Not the despair that whispers that nothing will change. Not the grief that feels like it has already buried you alive. He knows your name, your real name, the one underneath all the roles and the weariness. And he is not the least bit afraid of your dark places. He walks straight into them, and he calls you out toward the light. You are not forgotten in your grave of a night. The voice that called Lazarus is calling still. Breathe deeply. Let that hope settle over you like a warm blanket pulled up to your chin on a cold night, because raising Lazarus was the turning point. When the news spread that a man dead 4 days had walked out of his tomb, the crowd swelled and the powerful grew afraid. This, they decided, could not be allowed to continue, and so the raising of one man from the dead set in motion the death of another. The road ahead now led straight to Jerusalem, to a borrowed room, a garden of sorrow, and a hill outside the city walls where a cross was waiting. Chapter 7. The Cross and the Empty Tomb. Now we come to the week that changed the world. Stay with me gently through the dark part, because it does not end in the dark. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a young donkey, not a war horse, not a chariot, but a humble donkey, the Mount of Peace. And the crowds went wild with hope. They spread their cloaks on the road before him, and cut palm branches and waved them, and cried out, "Hosanna," a word that means "Save us now." For a shining moment, he was hailed as a king, welcomed into the holy city with shouts of joy. But the mood of the city was a knife's edge. The same crowds that cheered could turn, and behind the walls, in quiet rooms, the powerful men who feared him, the ones who had watched him raise Lazarus, who had seen the people flock to him, had already decided, coldly and finally, that he must die. On his last night, he gathered his friends in an upper room for a meal. And he took bread, bread again, always bread, the house of bread come full circle. And he broke it and said, "This is my body, given for you." And he took the cup and said, "This is my blood poured out for you. Do this and remember me." Then he went out into a garden called Gethsemane to pray, and there the sorrow nearly crushed him. He knew what was coming. He fell to the ground and prayed, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will but yours. Breathe. This is the hard part. Stay near." That night, in the garden, he was betrayed with a kiss by one of his own 12. Soldiers came with torches and swords. He was arrested. His friends, who had promised to stand by him, scattered into the dark. Even Peter, the rock, denied 3 times that he had ever known him, and then wept bitterly in the cold. Through the night they tried him on false charges, dragging him from one court to another. He was struck, spat upon, mocked and blindfolded and beaten. A crown of thorns was twisted and pressed down onto his head. And through all of it, the lies, the blows, the cruelty, he stayed silent, like a lamb led to the slaughter. And in the morning they led him out, weak and bleeding, made to carry his own cross through the streets, out to a hill called Golgotha, the place of the skull. And there they crucified him, drove nails through his hands and feet into a Roman cross of wood, and lifted him up between 2 criminals, and left him to die slowly in the sun, in full view of the mocking crowd. For 6 hours he hung there, and even then, even in agony, he spoke words of mercy. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." To the criminal dying beside him, who turned to him in his last hour, he said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And even as he died, the world seemed to feel it. At the 6th hour, in the middle of the day, the sky went dark, and darkness covered the land for 3 hours, as though creation itself was mourning. And at the 9th hour, he cried out, and then he spoke 3 words, not words of defeat, but words of completion, of a work finally and fully done. It is finished. The debt paid, the love proven, the whole long journey, from the manger to this hill, complete. And with that he bowed his head and he breathed his last. Rest here for a moment. Let the silence be silent. Let it be Friday for a moment, and let it be dark. They took his body down and laid it in a borrowed tomb, cut from the rock, and rolled a great stone across the entrance, and sealed it and set a guard. His friends scattered in grief. Everything they had hoped for lay dead behind a stone. The Sabbath came, and the world was quiet, and it seemed that the darkness had won after all. But Sunday was coming. Breathe. Here comes the light. Before dawn on the first day of the week, some of the women who loved him came to the tomb to anoint his body, and they found the great stone rolled away, and the tomb was empty. The grave cloths lay folded where the body had been, and a figure in dazzling white spoke words that have never stopped ringing across the earth. "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. He was not there. The tomb could not hold him. The grave that swallows everyone had opened its hands and let him go." And that morning, in a garden near the tomb, a weeping woman named Mary Magdalene stood alone, undone by grief, certain that someone had stolen even his body from her. She saw a man nearby and thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said through her tears, If you have taken him away, tell me where you have laid him." She did not recognize him. Grief had blinded her to the very face she was longing for. And then he spoke one word, her name, Mary. And she knew. In an instant, everything turned. The tears of despair became tears of impossible joy. He was not dead. He was not gone. He was here, alive, speaking her name in the cool of the morning. And she ran to tell the others the news that could never again be buried, the news that would outlast every empire. He is alive. He is alive. This is the mystery they tried for centuries to silence and could not. This is why the story survived every fire and every sword. Because an empty tomb cannot be argued away by people who knew where the body had been laid. The stone was rolled back, not to let him out, but to let the world see in, and see that death itself had lost. You are held, you are loved, you are safe. Even in the face of the last dark thing, you are safe. Breathe deeply now. The worst has passed. Let the morning light come. Chapter 8. Why this was written for you tonight. So here we are, at the end of the story and the end of the night. We have walked a long way together, from a manger in the cold to a river and a wilderness, from a lake shore full of fishermen to a hillside where a boy's small lunch fed thousands, across storm-tossed water to the mouth of a sealed tomb, and through the darkness of a Friday into the light of an impossible Sunday morning. It's a story of 33 years, and of a love reaching across 2,000 more, all the way to this room, this bed, this quiet moment where you lie listening in the dark. And you might be wondering, as your eyes grow heavy and your breathing slows, what does all of this have to do with me? An old story, a faraway land, people who lived and died so long ago. What does it have to do with the weight I'm carrying tonight? Everything. It has everything to do with you. Let me tell you gently before you sleep why each piece of it was kept alive for a night like this one. Remember the manger. The holy did not come to the powerful and the important, to the palaces and the thrones. It came to the overlooked, the tired, the travelers with no room, the poor shepherds in the cold fields. So if you feel small tonight, if you feel forgotten, if you feel like the world looked right through you and passed you by, hear this. That is exactly, precisely the kind of person this whole story came for. The world may overlook you, but you have not been overlooked by the one who counts the stars and knows them each by name. He came all that way to the smallest and lowest place, so that no one would ever have to wonder if they were too small to be loved. Remember the wilderness. The desert came right after the words, beloved son. The hardest, loneliest, hungriest stretch came right after the mountaintop. So if you are in a dry, hard, hungry season right now, if this is a wilderness time, when God feels far and the days feel long, hear this. It does not mean you are unloved. It does not mean the voice that called you beloved was mistaken. Sometimes the wilderness is not a punishment at all. Sometimes it is simply the place where you find out at last that you can stand. And even there, in the driest place, you are not walking through it alone. The angels came to him when it was over. And you will not be left without care either. Remember the loaves. What felt like far too little became more than enough the moment it was placed in his hands. So do not measure this night by what you think you lack. Bring him the little you have, the tiredness, the failure, the unfinished things, the 5 loaves of a long and difficult day. It is not too small for him. It never was. In his hands, the little multiplies until there are baskets left over, and you are fed, and there is still more besides. Remember the hand on the water. The moment Peter cried out, before he had sunk more than a step, the hand was already reaching. There was no delay, no lecture, no waiting to see if he would manage on his own. So if you are sinking tonight, you do not have to hold yourself up by sheer will. You do not have to be strong enough. The hand is already there in the dark beside you. It was reaching for you before you ever thought to call. And remember the tomb, both tombs. Remember that he wept at his friend's grave, so you know he does not stand above your sorrow but climbs down into it and sits with you there. And remember that he walked out of his own grave on Sunday morning, so you know that no darkness, not even the last and deepest one, has the final word. The stone always rolls away in the end. The morning always comes. Breathe. Let all of it settle over you now, one truth at a time. Like a warm blanket laid over you in the cold, here is what I most want you to carry into sleep. The whole story, from the manger to the empty tomb, is one long answer to the question you may be most afraid to ask. Am I loved? Am I really, truly, no matter what, loved? And the answer, told over 33 years and 2,000 more, whispered through fire and sword, and every attempt to silence it, is yes. Yes, you are loved. Not because you earned it, not because you have it all together, but simply because you are his, and he came all that way and gave all that he had to find you. You are seen, you are known, you are held, you are loved, you are safe, you are not alone tonight. You never were. Rest now. Let your breathing slow. Let the story hold you as you drift. Closing and prayer. We have walked a long way together tonight, you and I. We have knelt at the manger in the cold and heard the shepherd's hurried footsteps. We have stood at the river's edge and heard the voice from heaven name him beloved. We have followed him into the wilderness and watched him stand. We have sat on the green grass and eaten bread that did not run out. We have seen the man on the water and the hand that caught the sinking. We have wept at a tomb and heard a voice call the dead back into the light, and we have stood in the terrible dark of a Friday and waited through the silence and watched the stone roll away on a morning that changed everything. And through all of it, one truth has held steady, like a light left burning in a window. Love came looking for us. It came to the small and the tired. It walked into the wilderness and the storm and the grave, and it came out the other side, still holding on, still calling our names. Whatever darkness this night holds for you, that same love is here, in the quiet, closer than your own breath. Let us pray. Father, we come to you at the end of this day, tired and small, and we thank you. Thank you for coming to the overlooked and the weary. Thank you for the hand that reaches before we even call. Thank you that no wilderness is too dry, no storm too wild, and no grave too deep for your voice to find us. For the one lying here tonight, carrying something heavy that no one else can see, I ask not that you explain it all, not that you answer every question, but simply that you be near. Be the light in the manger's dark. Be the calm that settles over the water. Be the hand that reaches before we even call. Be the voice at the tomb, speaking a beloved name into the dark. Let them feel even now as sleep comes and the day loosens its grip, that they are held and loved and never, ever alone. Quiet every anxious thought. Loosen every knot of worry and carry them gently down into rest. Amen. Sleep now, beloved. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. This is your night psalm story, and we will walk with you again soon. Good night. Amen.